comment, rate, subscribe, merch in the description. Check out our Facebook pages. We got marketplaces you can buy and sell stuff on.
This is Dragon Ball Super Masterclass 30. Cards to beware. Are cards to beware of, right? These are cards that always, not all these cards, but these are cards to be aware of when you playing the game. You always have to take them into account when you build decks, when you create a strategy. Like a win con, for example, you need to make sure that you do what some people like to think, like to say, is this win con God ceiling proof or something like that, right? The idea of, is this capable of being used without a certain typical card being, capable of stopping, right? So, I lost track, so I don't remember what I was saying, but yeah, cards to keep track of when you're playing. So, a lot of these cards, we're going with battle cards first. The most typical thing you have to keep in mind, and these are not all the cards that you should be aware of, but these are cards you should be aware of, right? Because they're still playable. They still exist, right? But there's some cards that are banned, so you don't have to worry about them, obviously, right? Being played. But Zeno, the Playing God, and the Chain Zeno strategy is still viable, right? As in, it still can be used. It still can exist, right? At any given moment, you're playing up against a certain deck, and bang, somebody plays this. I've seen people have this, Chain Zeno in their sideboard. So it's still a possibility. Like, it still could happen. You know what I mean? So it's something to keep in mind. Not saying that you will see it might pop up in Duel per se. What I'm saying is keep it in mind that it exists. That's what I mean by beware. Be aware that it exists, that it could be played. Whether it does or doesn't, it's irrelevant. It's that it could be played. You always want to make sure it's the whole plan for the worst, which is be aware of these cards, right? But hope for the best, that no one plays these cards, right? I'll jump real quick and go straight to Android 17 turning on tide, right? Be aware that it exists, just hope that no one plays it, right? That's the concept here. Be aware that those cards exist, but hope no one does play them. That you can see it better. So, like I said, Chain Zeno is a thing, so keep that in mind. And then we have Height of Mastery Goku. I think if I'm right, Victory Strike was banned, so you don't have to worry about that. But Height of Mastery is still playable, still viable. I think you can still play him. I can't remember at the moment of the ban list, but he's 35k with Deflect, Triple Strike. You can do 3 damage, and he has dual attack, so he can attack twice. So he has 2 chances to do 3 damage. And he can potentially do 6 damage just by himself. That's a lot of damage. You can definitely use this, and there's ways to try to cheat him out, early game, so you can get that 6 damage in real quick and get your opponent down to 2 life relatively quickly, and finish them off with a double strike or some burn effect later on the game. So that's important to keep in mind. He has the ability that when you play him through swap, you can choose a total of 3 of your opponent's battle cards or energy, ignoring barrier, and switch them to rest mode. That way it can greatly increase the chances of you not being able to play, your counter attacks, like your Topos or anything of that nature, or tap down some battle cards like blockers so they can't block this attack. So it greatly increases its chances of getting its attack to go through. Basically a UA, right? An unstoppable attack. So moving on. Let's see. Oop, there we go. Mirror Creative Absorb. This is a really good card, and this combined with Champa for Issa Supreme, you know, you finish your opponent off with a double strike, a very strong double strike. So it's a going tall strategy because he gets 5k power for the duration of turn for every card in your warp. So, for example, if you warped, since this has overwhelm 4, if you warped 4 cards, that's 20k power to his power, so it makes him a 50k. And if you give him a Champa, he's a 60k double strike. Attack your opponent's leader. So, say your opponent, of course, your opponent's leader would be 15k, just more like if you're on Awaken side. So, in order to out combo it, your opponent's going to need 50k worth of combo power in order for him to be 65 in order to out combo this attack. So of course you want to set this up. But I'm not going to go into the whole strategy. The point is you want to avoid your opponent playing this against you, obviously. So keep this in mind that this is a possibility. It's important to keep track of your opponent's drop area. This overwhelm is a thing, and this is one of the overwhelm cards you got to worry about. There are some others. Let's see if I can skip some real quick. Skip some cards. So we got the mirror, right? We got the food. So this is not an overwhelm card to worry about. Food, the Dark Banisher, because he has triple attack. That means he attacks 3 times. He's a 25k, so he has 3 chances to Champa you to death, right? And he has overwhelm 8, so it costs. So you want to use 8 or more cards in their drop in order to play this, and for energy to play it. So they could drop this as soon as turn 4, for example, and attack 3 times. And of course they could attack the first 2 times, right? Let's say they do 2 damage from that, and then attack the 3rd time, then chop that, the 3rd attack. And right there, that's a total 4 damage they can do with this and a Champa. So this and a Champa can do potentially 4 damage. So keep that in mind. Let's see. And also it has the ability your opponent can't activate skills unless they choose 1 card in their hand and send it to their warp. So if they try to negate, like with a counter attack or something, they'll end up having to give up a card in the process to do so. So if they activate a blocker, same thing, they have to lose a card. So that's important to keep in mind. So moving on. So those are the overwhelms. This is another good card to keep track of. Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, Toward the Dark Empire, 35k triple attack. So it's definitely up there, with status of the level of ultimates. So definitely strong card at 35k power is a problem, right? And it can easily be played out for 4 energy, so it definitely could be a problem. And it's a blocker, so it could potentially defend itself on the clapback, so that could be a problem. Then it has the ability that when this card attacks, your opponent chooses 2 cards from their hand and 2 of their battle cards, ignore and bury, and send them to the warp. And at the end of the turn, switch this card to active mode, so you can freely use all 3 attacks, right? And then the first attack, you trigger your auto to warp 2 of your opponent's battle cards and 2 cards from their hands, drastically reducing their defensive capabilities, and potentially get those 3 attacks to go through. And if they survive, restand at the end of the turn, so you could use have a 35k blocker for the clapback, right? So you can get another turn to try it all over again, which would be a problem if your opponent gets another turn, right, to use this. So this is something definitely you want to keep track of. It's an 8-drop, so obviously it's really good in Hachiag or against Hachiag. So there's that. So that's another card to be aware of. Let's go into the ultimates real quick so we can get through them. Obviously, always got to worry about a Zeno play, right? Because it has successor 12, and they can be played in green decks and yellow decks. So if you're going up against those colors, you always have to be aware, right? Beware of a Zeno, and it has the ability to rip 3 cards out your hands, dual attack, and it's a quadruple strike, so it could do 8 damage all by itself. So definitely something to be aware of. Baby Hachiag. Every blue deck automatically auto-includes this. I know I do. So it can definitely shut down the whole turn, give your opponent an extra turn to attack you, especially if they went all in on one turn, went at you, try to get you down to very low life, or at least just try to get as much damage through as they could. And then in the turn, then your turn, you try to come back, and then they drop this. It's like, oh shit, they shut down your whole turn. It's like, now you gotta end your turn, and then they get another chance to try to take you out the following turn. So this is something definitely to be beware of. The first thing to keep in mind is, in order for them to play this for free and get the most out of it, they have to have 3 energy. So definitely want to keep track of the energy. So do as much damage within the first 2 turns, because once it gets to turn 3 and above, then this is what you have to beware of. So there's that. This is another ultimate that's popular among players. It's a good card, not too great, my viewpoint, but it's a good card nonetheless, and it's largely used. It's generic. Has an active battle ability, but you have to have they have to have 3 or more energy in order to play it for 1 energy. So again, keep an eye out on energy. Anytime your opponent goes to 3 or more energy, it's when you gotta beware of stuff, because you notice a lot of these cards are have high cost order. They're playable for cheap or free when there's 3 or more energy, which is ironic, right? That they don't have to use those 3 or more energies to play most of these cards, because you notice a lot of these cards are free. So that's why you gotta beware of these really good cards. This, of course, forgot to mention. Should be obvious that this has the ability that when you play this card from your hand, if you do, right, your opponent can't attack with leader cards or unison cards for the turn, so it shuts down leaders and unisons for a turn. And then it has the active main ability. Choose this card in all of your opponent's battle cards and unison cards and send them to the owner's warps. So this has, obviously a board wiping capabilities, so keep that in mind. So beware, right? But there's a lot of cards in this game that board wipes, but that's a generic one. So, and it does kill unisons as well. So that definitely makes it a problem. So keep that in mind. There's another ultimate that people can generically play, because all they have to do is combo this and then pay 1 extra energy. So 2 energy in total to play this from the drop area after you combo with it. And then you can choose, your opponent can choose any number of your cards, leader cards, battle cards, and unison cards, equal to your energy or less, ignoring barriers for some Resmo, so they can tap you out. If they use this defensively, and he is a blocker, so they can use this defensively, tap down a lot of your attackers so you can't attack. It's a 40k blocker, so it can't block an attack if you still so happen to have an attack, or let's say you overwhelm, they, it's a 40k blocker, so it can stop that, overwhelm play. So this is something different to be aware of. That for 1 energy, for 2 energy, they can potentially shut down your turn. And then, the clapback with this card has the active main where they pay 4 energy to give this card double strike and dual attack. So it's a 40k double strike. They can attack twice. So it has the potential to do 4 damage by itself on that clapback. So be aware that is a possibility. And most of these cards are under $200. Like the ultimates most of them are under $200. So beware, because some people would pay for that type of power. Let's see where I'm at. I think this is the last ultimate showcase, and this bad boy. I definitely use this. It's definitely a really good card. So much of my style right here. It's a 40k dual attacker, so attack twice. It can lower the cost of this card. If you have 5 mono red cards, you can lower it by 3 costs, so it's a 5 drop card. You have 5 mono red energy, so you can play this as soon as turn 5. And then you can't combo with cards from your hand when you attack with this, but you still can combo from the field. And then your opponent can't use counters or blockers, so your opponent can't negate or block the attack. They're going to have to out-combo it. It has a protection, so it can't be removed from the battery, so your opponent can't KO it or warp it or something like that with effects, or bounce it to your hand with effects. So they have to try to out-combo it. And it has 2 attacks, right? Because it's dual attack, and it's a 40k body, so your opponent's already going to have trouble comboing this. Not impossible, but it'll be hard. They could out-combo the first attack, but it'll be hard for them to out-combo the second attack because they use so much for the first attack, right? So, and then we have the active main ability. If the leader card is red, you can move this card from the game in order to deal 1 damage to the opponent. So beware of being at 2 or 1 life. Be aware of being at 3 life. That's another thing. You usually don't want to be less than 4 life. If you can stay at 5 or more, always good. But if you need to awaken, then you awaken at 4, then 4 is a thing. But always try to keep your life points high. Definitely want to keep them at 4 if possible, or higher. Because anything less than that, you're in kill range. You get down to 3 life, you can die to triple strike. If you're down to 2 life, you can die to double strike or burn effects that deal 2 damage, for example, or dual attacks. If you're down to 1 life, well, you're definitely going to die to any burn effects. But there's a lot of them. Cards that deal 1 damage. And 1 single strike all they need is just 1 single strike to get through, just 1 attack to get through to end you out if you have 1 life. So beware of that. Other things to be aware of. Let's go through the super combos real quick. Just 2 in particular. The Zamasu super combo is a card to be aware of because of the fact that it can that your opponent choose up to 1 of your leader cards or battle cards and switch them to rest ball. So this could easily shut you down on attacks because so it doesn't affect units, so the units are safe, but it does affect the leader and the battle card, so be careful in your attack order. Pro tip, you rather attack with a battle card and have your opponent Zamasu your leader, then your battle cards, because your battle card more likely have better effects, right? They might have dual attack, triple attack, or something, or they can do a lot of damage. Like they have double strike or triple strike or quadruple strike. So you rather attack with your battle card first to help you try to avoid this card being a bomb. I've been in a scenario where I attack with my leader, and then I get Zamasu, and my battle card got tapped, and it's like, needed my attack to go through. And the reason I attacked with the leader first was because I was trying to get a draw out of the leader, draw a card, and then try to use the card that I draw for combo power for when I attack with my battle card. But since my opponent is Zamasu, that tapped my battle card, therefore I wasn't able to use my battle card in that line of play. So that's why you have to beware of this possibility of this card being used, because it can ruin that strategy. It's a good strategy, swing with the leader to draw and do this. Obviously, a way you can avoid this is swing with the leader first. Don't play a battle card yet. Swing with the leader first. And if they do Zamasu, well, there's nothing left. There's nothing they can put into rest mode with this effect, right? And then play your battle card and attack. So that's another way you can avoid the Zamasu. But that's the whole idea of being aware, right? Being aware of these cards, knowing that they exist, knowing that there's a possibility they could be used, and try to play in a way that can help you avoid falling into the traps, as it were, falling into these cards, because these cards are good. And if you're not careful and you're not experienced enough, they can, hurt you. And that's the whole idea of being aware, is experience, right? You know these cards exist, you know what they can do. If you play it against, people who use these cards, you gain experience, you learn, what to do, what not to do in certain situations, because you know that these exist, so you know what to do, right? You won't be foolish and make a bad mistake or make a bad play that causes you the game just because you were unaware of these types of cards, or unaware that you should be trying to avoid these cards, right? Try to avoid these cards doing anything. So that's one super combo to be aware of. The other one is views, because of the fact that you're always looking for the best opportunity to do what you want to do, right? The best opportunity to attack your game or to make a play or whatever, right? Make a play and not worry about some type of counterplay or something, right? Want to. So, but mainly, the whole idea is to deal damage and win, right? Go for game. You gotta be aware that even if it looks like your opponent's tapped out, something like this, like views, can be used to untap an energy. Then that energy can be used to play something like the Senzu Bean. The Senzu Bean can untap more energy, and then they could play, more cards. They could do a rival play, for example, and do some stuff that can help them survive that attack and put them in a more beneficial position. So be aware that even when your opponent's tapped out, they're not. That's the idea with that. Be aware. So the next thing would be, let's go with the counters. Next thing to be aware of is counter plays. Right? The fact that you'll try to play something and your opponent can stop you, right? They can counter your play. Gastel being one of the most popular ones, and you can play it for free if you have a unison with 2 or more markers. So a blue unison to be exact. So if you see a blue unison with 2 or more markers, then obviously Gastel's Trunks is not that far behind. And this has the ability to where you may discard this card from your hand. If you do, the battle card being played is returned to its owner's hand instead. If you don't, discard this card, you could play this card. So obviously people don't use this to play a 15k buy for free. They play this to bounce your shit to your hand. So your card doesn't hit the field and do anything. So, and this doesn't have a cost restriction, so this can bounce anything. It's a battle card, of course. So if you have a battle card that does not have deflect, you gotta beware of this card. This card can be a problem. That was in a scenario once where I had Super Saiyan 4, Vegeta, Superior Warrior or something like that, Super Warrior, and I was playing, and I wanted to play it so I can ramp up for energy, but my opponent had a Unison. I was trying to knock off some markers by attacking with my Unison and my leader, and try to get it down to at least one marker so I can avoid a free Godzilla Trunks play. But I was unable to get it down to 1, so I still had to worry about my opponent playing Godzilla Trunks. And it turned out that I was right to worry about it because he had all 4 copies in his hand. So definitely was going to God Sealing every turn, every time I try to do something. So that right there was a problem. Look at this. It's a 5 cost. It normally will cost 5 to play this to do its effect. But because you can play for free, it becomes a problem. And if your opponent has multiple copies, yeah, they have the advantage. They can do whatever they want, and you can't because they can easily stop you. So that's why you have to be aware of this. This gives an unfair advantage. I have nothing against good cards and, strategy and stuff like that, but I want there to still be skill. There's no skill in this card. You can play this card for free. My grandma can use this card, so just pointing that out. Just pointing it out. I'm not against the card's abilities. I'm just against the cost, which is free. Free. You can say it costs 2 for a 2-drop unison, but it's like, or 1 for 1 drop unison with +1 or +2 counter capabilities. Marker capabilities is like, yeah. the card mathematically gets cheaper. It's still free. Same thing with Frieza's Camera Villain. The only difference is that this has an auto. And the auto is what causes it to do something, right? So if you have something with barrier, then this means nothing. If you have barrier, then Gassing Trunks would still hurt you, right? This, if you have deflect, it's irrelevant because the counterplay of this card is not what's affecting you; it's the auto of this card that's affecting you. So this card can be used to bypass cards with deflect. Right? Cards that has barrier can bypass this card, right? So stuff like that is important to keep in mind. So that's why you have to beware. So when it comes to Frieza's Chimera Villain, Frieza, having things with barrier is definitely something must have. It's a good idea to have things with barrier. Period. So whenever something has a barrier, definitely keep that in mind. Add it to your collection of cards to play because it has barrier. At some point, it's going to be relevant. Especially against stuff like Charismatic and Frieza, because it's just like asking Trunks. You can play for free if you have, a unison with 2 or more markers, and this one's for green. So, and there are other counterplays that can be played for free. It's just that Frieza and Gassy Trunks are like they do something to battle cards. So when you try to play a battle card, they'll play this for free and react to it. And that can make the difference between you winning or losing, which is why you have to be aware. So against green decks, I don't have to worry about Charismatic and Frieza if I'm playing stuff with barrier or indestructible or any effect that says can't be KO'd or removed or something. So be aware of that. One of the new counterplays. The new counterplays. I go with this one. Is I'm also the eliminator. This actually can counterplay a unison. So that's an important detail because this card says play this card, and if the card being played, not battle card, the card being played has energy cost of 4 or less, return it to the owner's hand instead. This also can be used against since it says card, right, being played, if I'm right, it should work against extra cards. The main thing for me is that it works against unisons. So this could be used against battle cards, unisons, and potentially extra cards. So very good, very universal. It's a $50 card on TCG Player right now. So this is something to be aware. As you can see, it only costs 2 to play. 1 blue, 1 yellow. Someone played this on me once, so very aware of. Now I'm very aware, right, of its capabilities. Another counterplay to be aware of is Swift Retaliation Cooler, because this could stop a like a counter attack that you were trying, or counterattack, like a Topo, for example. In case you're trying to use Topo to survive a turn, they can always just Swift Retaliation Cooler for 3 energy and stop you in your tracks. Plus they'll draw a card. They could potentially draw 2 cards if they have 6 or more cards in rest mode. So they could potentially draw 2 cards, increasing their hands, so that way they can use their hands to combo to get their attack to go through. And Swift can stop counter attacks, right? So as long as they make sure you don't have a blocker, and they have at least 3 yellow energy, they can swing. They'll try to counter. They'll pay 3 to counter, draw 2 cards if they have 6 more cards in rest mode, and dump their hand into the attack, and now you have no choice but to try to out combo. So that card right there can put you in a position where you have to out combo, right? It creates a unstoppable attacker situation. So great card to use when you're trying to go for game, especially if you're using your leader or a unison as your finisher. This is a good backup, a good card to play just to deal with a counter attack. You always wait until your opponent's tapped out, don't have blockers, have a small hand size. These are the criteria you're looking for to try to go for game, right? Try to attack for game, especially if you only have one really strong attacker. Definitely want them to have no blockers, no energy to potentially play a counter attack, and a low hand size, because you're trying to win by going tall. And hopefully you can dump your hand into your attack and make it way strong, so your opponent can't combo and get your attack to go through. So that's a type of things to take into consideration there. Another counterplay that could be problematic, to be aware of, is Vegeta Exploding Weakness, because of the fact that it can potentially board wipe you. Plus, it can increase the leader's power by 5 for the duration of turn. So if the leader's awakened, it'll be 20k for the duration of turn. So make it harder for you to go for game. So that's something to be aware of, especially if you're going wide. That's why I'm saying it's something to be aware of, because this is something that we played on your turn. So if you go wide and then your opponent drops this, it's like, oops, you tapped out, you went wide, and they hit you with this. So that could be a big problem. So be aware. Okay, so those are all the counterplays. So let's go here. Obviously, Topo, always got to be aware of Topo-like effects. Any battle card that can negate an attack and then have a auto that for the rest of the turn, you're affected in a certain way. Whether you're discarding cards from your hands to attack, or milling cards to attack, or whatever, or getting rid of energy to attack, or putting a card from your hand at the bottom of your deck when you attack. There's so many different versions of this type of effect, so be aware. Topo is one of the most common one of the original OGs, so I'm using an example. So be aware of that. Black Mass Saiyan, or any card that has a floodgate ability, an effect that constantly keeps working that can be a problem. So you always have to be aware. This is one of the old original cards that I always had to keep in mind, always had to be aware about. You know. So I always try to make sure I have ways to get rid of this. Even though I haven't seen this card in a long time, like the last time I seen this card be used, or the last time this card's been ever used against me was when I went up against a Dark Broly deck, and it was really good in the Dark Broly deck. It's definitely making things hard. That's what she said. But I still was able to deal with it because I had stuff in my deck. Planet M2 was definitely one of the old ways I had to get rid of this. So I'll play Planet M2, I'll swing with my leader, so that way I can use Planet M2's active battle ability, and then minus 5k from this card and get rid of it. Before I played stuff like Bodyguard Electric or anything else that would trigger this card's ability. So even to this day, I still beware of this card. Always got, because I'm always trying to play stuff for free, trying to cheat things out, and that's why it's important to be aware of this card's existence, because your opponent can always side deck this or main deck this, and it could be a problem. Losing hand size is not good, so there's that to be aware of. Let's go to Android 17 real quick. Android 17 turn tide, obviously. This can easily snatch up a win real quick. Again, if you're down to 2 life and you're going up against a blue deck, beware of Android 17 turn of the tide. You can definitely hit the board running hard. So he'll clear your hand, clear your drop area. And then he's 30k crit. Right, the most important part is the crit part, so he can attack you, attack your leader, do crit damage, which means you don't add a card from your life to your hand, so you won't have a card to try to stop, try to outcombo your opponent's leader's attack. So then your opponent can attack with their leader, and deal you the second damage, and that'd be enough to end the game. And this, something to always be aware. So you always want to beat your opponent before they have 7 energy for that. More blue cards. Abuni, still a thing. People could still play this. This is the way that blue can easily go wide in a single turn. With the right amount of energy, they can go wide, because if they have 8 energy, especially if they have a deck that ramps, they can drop 2 Abunis in one turn and have 8 attackers. So for 8 energy, they can have 8 attacks. They're all, the tokens are 15k power. The Abunis are 20ks. And if you have a nice thick hand, you can easily get the tokens to 20k plus. Swing at your opponent's leader, which means that your opponent's going to need, like 1 or 2 super cows per each attack, essentially to try to out-combo your attacks. And there's only but 4, you only have 4 super combos in the deck, so the likelihood of having, 8 super combos to try to stop each attack or have more than that is not likely. So, and if your opponent's hand's not that thick, it's less than 6 cards, then yeah, you're going to get a lot of these attacks to go through, and if your opponent's down to 2 life, then, GG, as they say. A nice little basic play you can do is play Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, right? To wrap up 4 energy and then use the 4 energy to play their Looney. That way you can have 5 attackers, 2 card combo, and have 5 attackers plus leader swing, so 6 attack. So for 6 energy to play the 6 drop, get 4 more energy to play this 4 drop, right? Get the 3 tokens, so now you have 5. You have 5 attackers. You have the 6 drop plus this 4 drop plus the 3 tokens. So that's 5 attackers there plus the leader. That's 6 attacks. off of 2 cards and 6 energy, and you can just potentially end your opponent right there and then. Because he's a 20k, the tokens are 15k, so the 6 drop is 30k, your leader will be 15k if it's awakened. And then when you attack with the leader, you draw, so you get a card out of it. So there's a lot that you could do. And this has the ability that you can, untap an energy, and of course use that energy for like, a negate or something, or a sense of being or whatever. So always gotta beware that opponent can do some stuff. And there's ways to ramp and try to get this out on turn 3. So that's nothing to be aware of. That they could play it out sooner than later. Because blue likes to ramp. Always beware of anything that has barrier. And so make sure you have barrier hate, which is I always try to make sure I have some type of barrier hate in my decks, just in case I go up against something that has barrier, especially a deadly defender barrier, because then it makes it harder to attack your opponent's leader. If it's hard to attack your opponent's leader, it's hard for you to win, right? So be aware of that. This card is still in the game, and it's definitely a problem. Like when it originally came out, and it's still good, it's still viable, still useful now. Then it KOs battle card 5 costs or less, and it's an active battle ability, and you draw a card when you KO a battle card. It doesn't ignore barrier, right? So that's why it's important to play stuff that has barrier to help you avoid this. But this itself has barrier, so gotta be aware that it has barrier, so you're gonna need some barrier hate. You see it, right? You need barrier, and you need stuff that kills barrier. Right? You need to play stuff that has barrier, so that way it forces your opponent to have to play stuff that gets that ignores barrier. If they don't have stuff that ignores barrier, then you have the advantage just by playing stuff that's barrier. But you don't want to be in that same disadvantage. So make sure you have stuff that can ignore barrier, so that way you're not at that disadvantage if your opponent does play stuff with barrier. So be aware. And this is a really good card, and it acts as a draw engine. So this plus a unison and a leader, can do a lot. Like I'm just thinking about it. Like, yeah, I'm gonna make a red-green Bulma deck and put this in there, right? This with Nappa and stuff like that. Oh man, that'd be good, because the leader would draw. I would have Madam Child for drawing. I would have a Piccolo Junior Unison for draw, and then have this for draw plus board control. Like, I'll be drawing a shitload of cards. So I'm definitely gonna make a Bulma deck, a red-green Bulma deck. Then double checking. Does this work? Leader card is red, yeah. So I can use this with both. So grab these cards red. No, just make it full. Alright. So put that over there. So then I go to this for now. Alright, so be aware of this card. It has alliance for red green. You need a red leader to use this effect. It's a double strike, so it's a 2-drop 16k double strike. So it's good generically, but it's better once you have a red leader, because then you have the alliance effect where you can put other battle cards you have into rest mode in order to give this card power equal to their power, so you can get this card's attack really high. Like I've seen this thing go to 100k real easily, and it also lets the person who plays this draw 2 cards. So there's card advantage. So it replaces itself +1, right? So it's a +1 effect, and it deals 1 damage if you have 3 or more life. So since it's a double strike, if you're at 3 life, this gets you down to kill range, right? This will bring you down to 2 life, and it will be really strong. It's double strike. It could potentially end you out. So technically, it's like a triple strike if you're at 3 life. So it could potentially kill you. You can go from 3 to 0 just from this thing attacking and pumping it up with the battle cards you have in your battle area, and then comboing. Just so good, so good. It's what a finisher is supposed to be. And this is something to beware of. So let's put that over there. And destruction, but most importantly, rebrand or anything similar to that. Anything that, you know, like, just got to be aware of her. There'll be times I'll go up against a deck, and then suddenly, green deck, a green leader, and then suddenly see this hit the drop. I'm like, rebrand. So then it's like, I know it requires 2 green energies to use her, so it's like, got to be aware of that, right? And start making moves and plays and plans to mitigate or at least to recover after I get rebrand. So something I always have to beware that she exists. And a funny thing is, even if the deck doesn't do a lot of hand destruction, I still have to beware that she can just pop out of the middle of nowhere. Like, she could be in the drop as from turn, as soon as turn 1, right? But the effect doesn't get used until like turn 4, and by then I'm like, yeah, I got these 2 negates, I'm gonna survive. No, I have this 1 negate to survive this turn. The next turn I'm gonna play my card, which is my win card. So next turn I'm gonna win because I have these 2 cards. And then my opponent is like, pay 2, rebrand, like, damn it, they got me. So you have to beware. So always try to play cards to draw, which is good to have in general, right? That's just a basic thing. Have a lot of draw power, so that way it's bolder. So that way cards like rebrand doesn't hurt you in the long run. You shouldn't be in a situation where late game you have 2 cards in your hands, right? Common sense, but it can happen. Shit happens, right? But you don't want to be in that scenario. You always want to make sure you draw a whole bunch of cards. So late game you have a nice thick hand. Always try not to combo when you attack, right? Only combo when you defend, but try not to combo, right? Try to block, negate attacks. Do whatever you can to not combo, because that's just a waste of resources. That's just a waste of hand advantage. That's just what I do. Everybody else should do the same. And we have Grade 8 Bard Excavator's Warcry. Ironically, we still have more cards after this. Good card, you combo it for 2 energy, get 10k combo power, and then after you combo with it, you play it, and then you draw a card and put one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode. So you have to be aware of this, because this is something that could be played, obviously, during the combo step. So you have to be aware of this, and it's a 20k double strike, so it can be used on the clapback as a finisher. So be aware of that. So it goes along the lines of a lot of like cards that arrival, but the fact that it arrivals itself, basically, it's an arrival card that doesn't require anything extra to arrival. Just 2 energy and bang, you got a 20k double strike. So it's that. So those were battle cards. Extra card is just 1 card, and that's just the Heron's Lineage. Also, it is an ultimate. But the main thing is, like, definitely something to be aware, because I have this card. A lot of other people use this card. I played at an event, and this card was used against me. So, definitely have to be aware of this card. So I always try to, look for cards that I could cheat out, like really good, strong cards that I can cheat out, but always looking to see if they're like 8 costs or more. So there's some good 8 drops that you can cheat out. That avoid this card, so that's always good. So this is something to be aware of, because your opponent can use it to take your 7 costs or less. Doesn't ignore barriers, so that's why having stuff a barrier is important. As I said before. Alright, so leaders. There's way more leaders, right, than these, but these are some to be aware of. I personally use this leader myself, so definitely a leader to beware of, because it essentially has a 2nd health bar. Because once it awakens, now every time you deal damage to this leader, your opponent mills instead of taking life. And in order to awaken, they have to have 2 or less life. So this essentially gives them more second health bar, right? More life than most leaders do. So something to be aware of. And you know, this is a blue leader, so obviously they'll have access to like Baby Hatchiyak and many other blue, you know, stable blue cards, blue good stuff, right? So this leader plus those good blue cards can be really hard. Can cause that's a problem. Can easily get to a lot of energy. Like I've used this to get to the point where I have 15 energy, and then win because I played some Super Saiyan Blue, Gogeta, Frenzy Burst, and made my opponent send up to 4 cards from their life to the bottom of their deck, and just, you know, essentially burn them per game. So done that many a time. So definitely beware. The funny thing is, you don't have to play blue with that leader. You can play whatever you want. It's just the leader itself, you know, it has a second health bar, so it's really good against aggro decks that try to go deal a lot of damage turn 1, turn 2 type stuff. This leader can definitely survive, you know, and get you to turn, you know, 4 and 5, even against an aggro deck. Because of that. Another way to counter aggro decks, right? That's the Hatchiyak, right? The Hatchiyak leader, because of its auto, when a battle card attacks, the player who attacked can't attack with tokens or battle cards with 7 costs or less, other than the card they attack with the duration of turn. So anything 8 or higher can attack after this effect activates. So this reduces how many, you know, battle cards your opponent can attack with. So that's why, you know, keeping track of stuff that has 8 costs or higher is important for me to keep track of, you know, because of this leader, for example. Stuff that has dual attack, you know, so that way so even if this effect triggers, I can still get some extra attacks. So that way I am not reduced by how much damage I could do a turn, because I'm using unisons, battle cards, maybe even leaders that have at least dual attack, or at least the ability to attack more than once, to make up for the fact that this card is restricting me. But the main thing is, this mainly affects battle cards, so mainly battle cards with dual attack, triple attack, stuff that I look for and have 8 costs, so I can bypass this leader's ability. You know, be aware that this leader exists. And the person who plays it doesn't even have to be that good at the game. They just gotta play this leader, and it makes the game easy for them. Furious Strike Goku. This is the awakened side. The main thing is he has an active main and active battle ability, which has the effect of place 2 cards from the life to the drop area, choose all your opponent's battle cards, choose all your battle cards and your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, and then place them into the orange drop area. So it has built-in board wipe. They can be used once per turn. So it can be used on your turn, obviously, after you try to go wide. It can be used on their turn. It just so happens to still have stuff. It does ignore barrier, so it obviously becomes a problem. So this is a very powerful effect that's on a leader, right? So it's going to be like 99% chance of you not being able to avoid this effect. So this can definitely be used defensively. I have a folder of defensive leaders, so most of these first 3 leaders I just showed you comes from that defensive leaders. So these are leaders to be aware of. There's plenty more leaders, you know, Bulma and stuff like that, Jiren, that are leaders you should be aware of because they're very defensive. They're really good defense leaders, which makes it harder for you to win when the leader itself has an ability to make it hard for you to win, which is awesome, right? Because usually you spend time trying to protect your leaders, but if you have leaders that already can protect themselves, that just makes your job easier, which is why I have a folder dedicated to those types of leaders. So when I want to build a deck and I'm like, damn, I got this really cool strategy, but it's very offensive, it's not that defensive. So I need a defensive leader. I need a leader that can protect itself, so I don't have to waste time, resources, and space in the deck to protect the leader while trying to do some really, cool combo, right? So I just grab a leader that's really good defensively and build the deck to do whatever I want it to do and not worry about being so defensive. I could build a deck with no negates, right? No blockers, no counterattacks. I just focus on like counter plays if I want to go that route. Counter plays and a whole bunch of like double strikes, triple strikes. Just go that route because the leader itself is defensive. So you have to beware these types of leaders. There's more than one win con. You can do everything you can. You could have a defensive deck that's really good at stopping attacks, but it's hard to stop mill, right? Especially when the leader is the one that's doing large majority of the milling. This is not the only leader that can do this. It's just the the original classic mill Nimba, right? The Janimba mill. But we got the cooler now. But the cooler you can kind of avoid getting milled as long as you don't play battle cards. If you focus on your leader and your unison, you can avoid cooler mill. But there's Android 18 mill, which will be harder too because they deliberately give you they give you tokens, right? So they're essentially giving you battle cards to take advantage of, for milling. So it'd be hard to avoid that. So these are 3 leaders to consider. Just mill in general. Just always beware of mill, leaders that mill or decks that mill. And in the future, they can make many more mill cards, mill leaders. So definitely beware that these are things you have to worry about. So if you have so by default, I try not to have like 1 or 2 or 3 copies of certain cards. I try to have more copies of cards, like 4 copies of everything. So that way, if I do get in a scenario where when it's milling me, or even doing hand destruction, that's a thing as well. Even if my opponent is doing hand destruction effects, I don't lose the 1 or 2 copies of a card that I'm using. I always have an extra copy, and then there's then I take into account charging energy, so that's whole game theory stuff of why I pretty much always play 4 copies of everything. And of course, the mighty Soul Striker Goku, Super Saiyan 3 Goku, also the honorable mention of a leader to beware of, because he's a really good leader because it ramps and then has the untapping energy thing. So it's up there with Soul Striker. The Soul Striker, can untap during your turn, so it makes it so it's Soul Striker number 1, Super Saiyan 3 Goku number 3 in comparison. So and yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do with this leader. So something to beware. Most leaders, you don't have to worry about too much. They tend to be pretty basic and generic. And if your opponent's tapped out, that's always great, and you never have to, not a problem, right? But Soul Striker definitely makes it a problem because it's hard for you to catch your opponent tapped out when they're using Soul Striker. Is the point I'm trying to make. Same goes for Super Saiyan 3 Goku. So this and Super Saiyan 3 Goku Reborn are things to leaders to beware of. So they could be a problem. And the last cards for now is unisons. Let's see. Let's go the green ones. So Metal Cooler, Terrifying Horde. It can generate 15k tokens every turn if you have a mono green leader. And that's just its free active main ability. But then it has its -4 ability, which it lets you play 3 Meta Cooler tokens. So what you can do, obviously, is pay 4 to play this. Activate its active main to make a token. So you have this unison and a token. Attack with a token, attack with this unison. So that's 2 attacks there. Then -4 from this card to make 3 more tokens. And then attack with those 3 tokens. So for 4 energy, you can do 5 attacks. Plus the leader swing, so that's 6 attacks right there. So for 4 energy, 6 attacks. So turn 4, you can swing for 6 damage. You know. And by turn 4, your opponent should be down to 2 life anyway. So right? And you only need 2 attacks to go through. So stuff like this is like, under the right conditions, automatic win con. And again, if your opponent has less than 6 cards in the hands, it'd be hard for them to out combo all these 15 attacks, 15k attacks. And let's say you have 6 cards in your hands, right? And they're all battle cards, they're all 5k, right? Then you can combo 1 card for each of your attacks and make each of your attacks 20k, right? 20k to your leader's 15k leader. Your opponent's going to need 10k per each attack, so they're going to need 60k worth of power. They're going to need 6 super combos essentially, right, to out combo your attacks. So you got to take that to account when you use this card through the combo map. But the point is that if your opponent uses this right, you can easily lose, because this literally can help your opponent create 6 attacks. And if you're at 2 life, they only need 2 attacks to go through, which will be their main goal. Another funny thing is, what they could do is just attack with the first 4 attacks, hoping you'll try to out combo them. Alright, making your hand smaller. Then on the last 2 attacks, combo to try to get the attacks to go through. So that's another way they could play it. So that's the thing. Be aware that your opponent can easily play that card and go for game. And it's a unison, so it'll be hard to counterplay it. Not impossible. There is a way to do it, but it'll be harder to counterplay it, so you don't have to worry about gas-hitting trunks or charismatic infusing this, that, and third, right? So that becomes a problem for you, right? If your opponent is using that and you got God Sealing, but you can't use it to stop them. So beware. This has board wiping capabilities, and it's a double strike crit, so it's guaranteed to make sure your opponent doesn't benefit from this dealing damage. So 20k double strike crit, and it has the ability to +1 marker, so it sticks on the field once it hits the field, and it'll be a 25k double strike crit. So it's really good. Obviously good as a finisher, good in general. And then, like I said, it has the more wiping capabilities, ignores barriers, so more reasons to worry about this card. So really good cards. Man, I'm getting tired. Let's see. So that was the green cards. Green cards. Let's see. There's another green card. Bardock Paternal Unison has the auto that can be used once per turn to combo kill, as they say. So this definitely can make it hard for your opponent to defend, because you're forcing them to use more cards, and you can use this to obviously kill super combos, to drastically make your opponent comboing pointless, or force them to combo even more, to make up for the fact that combo killed a super combo, or any card that gave them a 10k boost. This also can help you kill arrival plays, because you'll get rid of the battle super combo, super combo, super combo, or a card that they combo that's multicolored. This can help you kill it, so that way they can't arrival. So this can help you stop arrival plays, or at least reduce the ability for your opponent to easily arrival. has other good abilities, but that's the main ability on this card that is important to be aware of. There are other cards similar to this, but this is definitely easiest ones, and this has a +1 ability that you can use to rip a card from your hand. So this can make you discard a card from your hand, then the auto can make you discard, or kill one of your cards you combo. So you're drastically losing hand size just by this existing field. And since it has a +1 ability, it will stick. So it can definitely be a problem, something to beware of. So again, if you combo and this is on the field, beware that your opponent can use it and make it hard for you to out combo attacks. Let's see. Let's go blue. So we have Zeno. It can help your opponent ramp. It does +2 markers, so it can easily get, it can easily go from two markers up to 5 real quick. So in 2 turns, it can end up with 6 markers. It can end up with 5 markers. If you play this on turn 2, do the +2. It doesn't get attacks or stars markers. Turn 3, add another copy of this to it, so that's 5 markers, and then they can do the -5 ability, which lets them choose all cards in the battle areas, ignoring barrier, and shuffle them into the deck. So this can, definitely board wipe. So that's the main thing to be aware of. This helps ramp whoever uses this to ramp out and get out certain threats sooner than later, as well as board wipe. So definitely something to beware of. Blue unison to be aware of is Goku, Protector of the Earth, because he has an auto and the -2 ability that can be combined to drastically reduce. One -2 will help them board wipe, and the auto will make it hard for you to clap back. So auto, when this card is played during your opponent's next turn, they can't attack with battle cards unless they choose one other battle card with an energy cost of 2 or more and place it into the bottom of their deck in order to attack. So this effect only affects battle cards, so your leader unisons are immune to this effect, but this is definitely good against going wide decks, strategies. And then it has the -2 ability. Choose all of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, which is important, right? Return them to the owner's hand, so they can easily wipe your board with this, and then get this auto triggered to make it hard for you to clap back, as it were. And a lot of times this ends up still being on the board after being used, and so you can always use its -2 again, or use its -1 ability to draw 2 cards and then choose 1 card from your hand and place it at the bottom of the deck. So it tends to do some work and stick on the field. Also, it's a 15k buy, so you should play it, trigger the auto, do the -2, clear your opponent's board of blockers, right? Swing with the leader, swing with this, swing with whatever you got, take advantage of that turn, and then because of its auto, you don't have to worry about too much about your opponent's clap back, and so you're pretty much going to get an extra turn to try to swing again with everything you got. Take your opponent down, so you get essentially 2 turns for this. So definitely gotta be aware of this card. Your opponent can definitely use it to try to get 2 turns of attacking you back to back, which can drastically increase the chances of winning. Another blue unison. The fact that it can block, it has an auto that when you use the blocker skill, it can switch itself back to active mode, so you can block with it again. So it has the potential of stopping 2 attacks, and there's a 19k body, so it's it's really good. It will make it where your opponent will have to combo to try to knock markers off this card. So definitely something to be aware of. The fact that it could stop 2 attacks a turn is always good. That means it could do a leader swing and a unison swing. Just by itself, it can stop the leader and a unison, and then all your negates and blockers and stuff like that can be used and focused on your your battle cards. So that's something to beware of, because a lot of blue players are using it. I've been using it since day one, but players are starting to catch on to the awesomeness of the card. Gotenks is very versatile. It has dual attack and block. It's a 20k body, so it definitely can apply pressure to the Raditz unison, right? Potentially kill it. This, being a dual attack, you can attack a unison twice and knock off 2 markers, or attack 2 battle cards and KO them. Plus, it has a -3 ability. Lets you choose up to 2 of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring bearing placement at the bottom of your opponent's deck. So it can attack 2 battle cards with this, and then use the -3 ability to get rid of 2 more battle cards and clear your opponent's board of 4 battle cards just with this 1 unison. Right? It has the -2 ability where you can draw 2 cards. So it definitely helps you mitigate the effects of like hand destruction. So be aware of this. So if you play hand destruction and your opponent plays this, be aware that they can use the -2 to get the drawback, right? To get their hand back after re-end them or something. And it's dual attack, so they can attack with it, put it back in active mode, and then block. So it acts as both a sword and a shield. So they can apply pressure to your leader with this, attack with their leader to your leader, so they get 2 attacks a turn and still be able to defend. So beware. Plus their ability to get rid of battle cards as barriers. So that very versatile. Big fan of the card. Black card, just one. But, the other black unisons are decent. They have their uses and purposes. But this is just generically good in general. She's a 20k body. You need 3 or more markers on her in order to be able to attack with her. And then she has the active main of choose 1 card for your hand, discard it, and choose 1 of your opponent's battle cards. But energy cost 3 or less and send into warp, so this can get rid of any spot mode removal, right? It can get rid of any little blockers or any Black Man Saiyan, or the list goes on. So it doesn't ignore barrier, but anything that doesn't have barrier, this 3 or less, this can deal with. And then it has the active main ability. Choose 1 of your opponent's battle cards and gain control of it. Obviously, keep in mind that its +0 ability doesn't work on tokens because it has to do with cost. But its active main does work on tokens because it has to do with just a battle card, gaining control of a battle card. Okay? So this is good, a good effect. So be careful. She doesn't, whatever she takes control of, it stays in the position it is in. So, I want to keep that in mind. If your opponent's going to use this to take your battle card, you'd rather your battle card be in rest mode when it gets taken control of than it being in active mode, because then they can attack you. So there's that. But it's the fact that this is a black card, so you can use it in any deck. So anybody can use it, so it could always be a problem. So beware that she is an option. She could be a side deck card, So definitely a good side deck card. I mean, I main decker, but she's definitely a good side deck card if you do that. So beware. Then we have Mecha Gabora, really good card. It can block an attack once it loses a marker from blocking. It can tap down one of your opponent's cards. So it can tap down a leader, a unison, a energy, energy, or a battle card. So it could, stuff like that. So very versatile in that way. It has a -4 ability, which is the main one to worry about. It lets your opponent choose 1 of your battle cards, gain control of it, and switch attack them, so that way they can attack you with it. Right? So they can play this for 4. Obviously, minimum they'll be playing for this would be for 4. You specify yellow. Swing with it because it is 15k. Then -4 from it. Take your battle card and then swing with your battle card against you. so they could get 2 attacks for 4 energy with this card. That included Leader Swing, which can get you up to 3 attacks for 4 energy. If whatever they take has dual attack, triple strike, double strike, it's so be careful. This ability to take control doesn't ignore barriers. So again, if you have something that's strong, I mean, in general, your battle cards should have barriers to avoid stuff like this. So beware that stuff like this exists, that your opponent can try to take your stuff from you and beat you with it. So you might want stuff, your most important stuff, to have barrier. Or wiping in general, something to always be aware of. This is good. This card is good because it's 20k and dual attack, so it's a double sword, right? And attack twice, so it's really good in general. But it's a -3 ability to draw a card, then choose all your opponent's battle cards and rest one and KO them. So it's a board wipe. So be careful. So your opponent can play this, attack with it twice, -3 from this to draw a card and board wipe clear your board in the process. So, and the drawing, places it, so they're not really giving up much of anything. They're just benefiting two 20k attacks and then clearing your board after they survived the turn. So that's something to be aware of. It's at any time that all your battle cards are in rest mode, something like that can come out and take them out. This card exists, so be aware. I always take this card to account, but a lot of times it's hard to, build a deck with the, to build a deck that does what you want it to do and worry about this card. Like, I keep this card in mind, but sometimes I'm like, just because this card exists doesn't mean I shouldn't build a deck to work a certain way. It's just that I know that if somebody plays this card, it's going to be a problem. But hopefully I have ways to deal with it. Obviously, one of the many ways is unison, leader, extra cards, I could try to use stuff like that to deal with this. I'm double checking because, yeah, this is battle cards that are 5 or less. But that's a little irrelevant. I was thinking like, oh, you can use tokens, but tokens don't really have effects. So it's a little irrelevant until they create tokens with effects. That'd be nice. Dang, that'd be crazy, right? They create tokens that have double strike, for example. That'd be delicious. Because we already have tokens that they can have blocker. So imagine tokens with double strike and stuff like that. I mean, I have ways I can give a token double strike, but the main thing is that imagine if it had it, and since tokens don't have cost, this shouldn't affect them. So that's something to keep in mind. But the point is that this affects battle cards that are 5 cost or less. So yeah, keep that in mind. Plus, it has the -2 ability. Your opponent can only attack with battle cards once during their next turn. So it's a built-in Flying Nimbus plus the permanent. So your opponent can play this for 3, do the +2 effect, and now they're making it hard for you to attack a lot, and on your turn, and then you can't use your effects. So this card is a really good card. It's a good tech card, a good side deck option. I notice a lot of people aren't playing it, but they should. At least as a side deck card, because it's a really good card. This does get used, and definitely something to keep in mind, because it has the -1 ability. Your opponent can't attack with battle cards with energy cost greater than their current energy until the end of the next turn. So I'm always trying to cheat out really strong high cost cards. So I would be in a situation where this could be a problem. Opponent could always get an extra turn, and this has an active main where it can switch itself or a battle card to rest mode in order to add a marker, so it can always afford the -1 ability, because you'll tap it to get a marker, then remove marker to trigger this effect, and it can do that every turn. So it's a one-card engine that can shut down decks that cheat out, play a whole bunch of big monsters, big cost serves that while having less energy, right? So this is obviously good against Dark Broly and good against stuff like Swap, Union, Fusion, Union Absorb, Chains, Arrival plays, and the list goes on. So it's an evergreen card, as they say. It's always going to be good because players are always going to want to cheat out cards. They're always going to make cards that are really strong and cheat them out. Overrealm, this is good against Overrealm. So you always got to take that into account that this card exists, and if you go up against a yellow deck, be careful. You might want to use your leader or your battle cards more often than not. That's another thing is with being aware, having knowledge and stuff. That even if your opponent has cards that have these cards that will give them a great advantage against you, your experience, your understanding that those cards exist, and understanding like, if I play differently, those cards won't matter. Those cards won't be that much of a problem if I play different. I could just use my leader and unisons, for example, and not use any battle cards, and that would make a lot of these cards kind of pointless or useless. Or if I can, like against Android 17, for example, being able to play a lot of your cards for cheap, get them out, play them, for cheap or free, play them out as quickly as possible, use them up as quickly as possible. I mean, if you truly feel that you're just one turn away from your opponent ripping your whole hand with an Android 17, combo it off. Why keep the cards in your hands and just get Android 17 when you can just be like, I'm gonna attack with my leader combo, attack with my unison combo, like just combo your whole hand off. Get some use out of your hand before your opponent tries to rip it away, right? So stuff like that. That's the thing. It's like when you're aware of the existence of certain cards, certain effects, certain things, you can prepare for it, right? It's plan for the worst, hope for the best, right? That's how I play. That's how I build my decks. It's one of the things I do. That's obviously one thought process is planning for worst case scenarios, right? Plan for the worst, but always hope for the best, which is why I always tend to be ahead of the game when it comes, ahead of Bandai, for example. When it comes to certain things, like I'm gonna start playing 20Ks, 30Ks with triple strike. I'll start doing this. I'm gonna start doing dual attack, and this. I start playing certain things, certain cards, certain strategies, certain keywords, because I'm predicting the possibility that over a course of months, years, certain things are going to be added to the game that's going to make it where these things are going to be important. Dual attack, triple strike, stuff like that. Like these things are going to matter. Burn, these things are going to matter. The importance of unisons. A lot of people point out that I have too many unisons in my deck, and it's like, well, there's a reason for it, because the unisons are very powerful. They're like extra cards that can attack, essentially. So they take up extra card slots, not necessarily unison slots, as a word, right? They take up actually extra card slots in my decks. So I treat them not too different from extra cards. The difference is they can't attack. And a lot of times they're way better than a battle card, right? Because you could play them in, I'll say 90% of the cards in the game can't touch them. I'll say 95. 95 cards of the game can't touch a unison, can't do nothing against a unison, which is great, right? So of course I'm going to play more than however many unisons people think I should be playing. I play the numbers I play because they have their uses, they work, they do what I do. Other reasons for playing a lot of unisons, why I play a lot of unisons, is because I don't side deck, so my unisons are my side deck, if it makes sense, right? It's a side deck that's in my main deck, so it's my main side deck, whatever term you want to come up with. Point is that I main deck the stuff I would need for different situations and matchups. That's where being aware matters, right? I don't side in cards to beat certain matchups. I side in experience. That's what I like to think. I side in experience. My knowledge and my awareness of cards and strategies and decks that people like to use, popular decks like meta decks, that knowledge, that experience that I have is what I use when I play. So I build my decks based off of that knowledge and experience. So everything I need for whatever matchup I'm against, whatever deck I'm against, whatever player I'm up against, I already have the stuff I need in my deck to do what I need to do. And a lot of the effects that I use, a lot of the cards that I use, a lot of their abilities are relatively generic, like very versatile, or they have multiple effects, so they're useful in multiple ways, and then card combinations that combine cards in different ways to get certain outcomes and results. I made a master class before about creating cards, the idea of combining cards together to create the effect of another card. And I showed the comparison, like I use these two cards together and I get the results of this card. This card by itself does what these two cards do together. So I created a card. So instead of having this card in the deck, because I needed space to put something else instead, I use these cards because I need them for what they do, but when I combine them, they create the effects of this card. So it's like having this card in the deck without literally having it, if that makes sense. If I, for example, I use this card. If I have two cards in my deck, then when I use them together, gives me this -1 ability where my opponent can't attack with battle cards with energy cost greater than their energy. So that, right? If I can create that effect using two other cards, they're good by themselves on whatever they do, but when I combine them, I create this card's ability, then that's powerful, right? That's awesome. I don't have to side deck this card because I don't side deck. I don't have to main deck this card because I already have two cards that if I combine them, I get this card's ability. I get this effect. So it's not like I'm missing this ability. I have this ability. I just got combined two cards to get it. So that's like the method to my madness, as they say, right? That's my creative thought process. So, even if somebody thinks that I'm missing a card in my deck, like, oh man, you're missing this or you're missing that, like you need super combos or something. They don't realize that I have cards in the deck that are better than super combos, right? I got cards that can do more than what a super combo can do if I use them, and if I use them right, they're way better than super combos, right? So that's the thing is, don't assume that I don't know what I'm doing, because you'll be super wrong. And stay